welcome to the Zakariya Adeel podcast. Today's guest is somebody I've been following for about 2 years. He is an expert in, well, I'm not sure he'd say he's an expert. I think he's an expert in narcissism and dealing with the issue known as complex PTSD or CPTSD. And he's been very helpful to me. So I thought I would ask him if he would come on my podcast and talk to him about his experiences and his depth of knowledge when it comes to this subject. So, hello, Richard Grannon. Please, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you describe yourself?
Sure. Thanks very much for having me on, and thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that. My background is, well, I have a degree in psychology. I became a self-protection instructor for about 10 years after I did my degree. And then I circled back around to doing life coaching work with people. And that evolved quickly into helping people recover from narcissistically abusive relationships. When we looked at the core of how emotionally abusive relationships develop, it was found that there was a lot of childhood trauma, and CPTSD symptoms would keep people attracted to narcissists and then locked into narcissistically abusive relationships.
Mm. So was this sort of an academic thing for you, or did you have personal experience in this?
Oh no, it was very much a hands-on practical thing for me. I have been through two particularly savage abusive relationships, one with a borderline hypersexual histrionic, and then the second time around that I thought I would try again, it was with rather more covert narcissist, psychopathic type, much more dangerous the second time around.
I have to say that I've also had relationships like that. In fact, the complete honesty is I continually attract those types of relationships. I don't think I've ever had a relationship that's not like that. And the people that did turn up, they kind of were more balanced people. It seemed like the attraction wasn't there, or something wasn't quite right. I just seem to attract people who are narcissistically oriented.
Or you're more attracted to people who are narcissistically oriented.
What did I say? Isn't that what I said?
You said I attract people, and I said maybe you are attracted to.
Right.
It sounds like a minor distinction, but it can make all of the difference.
Yeah. Well, I don't doubt that. So,
do they like you, or do you like them? That's the key issue.
Oh, I've read Ross Rosenberg's work. He's a book on the human magnet syndrome, or the human magnet code. I can't remember. I think it's syndrome. Yeah, and it's it opened my eyes. I didn't know about this stuff until not Christmas gone, but Christmas before. That's the first time I read up on narcissism, and I knew a bit about it, but I didn't know it properly. And when I found out about it, I dove really deep. I mean, if you see the books by my bed, it's basically Dr. Romani's book, Margalis Fjellstad's books, Pia Melody's books. I mean, I've read loads already, and I continue to read more and more and learn more and more. That's how I found your channel. And I mean, seriously, thank you so much for everything that you do and the knowledge that you bring. I mean, seriously, you're probably not even aware of how many people that you've helped and how you've helped those people, because just listening to, and also it's not just the content or the information that you provide, it's the way you do it as well, with your sense of humor. So really big thank you, and big love to you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
What I wanted to talk to you about was specifically, I think that when people know the history of the person that's giving this information, myself, I work as a astrologer and a psychic and a tarot reader, and I sort of work in that realm. I write books on this stuff, and I'm happy to send you your chart.
Pisces, King of Cups.
King of Cups, Chinese year of the horse, I believe. I'm
horse. I don't know whether I'm steel horse or earth horse. I'm 1978. That makes it earth horse, is it? There you go.
Yeah. So basically, you're 1978 horse Pisces, I believe. So if you want me to, I'm happy to send you a chart if you are interested.
Yeah, I'm interested. Sure.
Yeah, I was having a look at it before actually, and so let me, as we're talking about it. So this is my first book that was released in 2016 called Secrets of the Combined Astrology. But I also have released 144 individual books. So what I'll do is I'll send you your Horse Pisces book, so it has more information about that.
Combined, as in you're combining Chinese and Western astrology, or?
Yeah, I combine
Oh,
the two
awesome.
together. Yeah. So as a Horse Pisces, what basically what it means, off the top of my head, is I do know this stuff. It's where you're born is where the academic geniuses are. So, but wait for the irony, right? The irony is that, and I've put this in the book, and I kind of wish that I could sort of retract it a little bit. But it is, generally speaking, it's quite true. I think the fact that you're Pisces makes you more psychologically aware. But generally speaking, horses aren't that psychologically aware. It's like they're more sort of, they live on their instinct. They survive on their instinct. They're the rebels. They're the freedom fighters for people. But I'll send you your stuff later. I mean, yeah, if you're interested. I love this.
That's interesting. Yeah, academic genius. I like that one.
Yeah, that's the part of the cycle where you're born. That's where they are. And also, I don't know if you ever watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but any person that came that was a watcher, they were all Horse Pisces. I have no idea why. But did you watch that show?
No, I don't think so. But I did read Anne Rice books, and she would write about the watchers. Yeah,
so that sort of watcher archetypical behavior, that sort of character, for some reason, they cast Horse Pisces people to play those roles.
Oh,
it's a pattern.
Are you saying that in the show, synchronistically, the actors who played the role were always Horse Pisces?
Listen, there are patterns across the board. Like, if you think of the famous whistleblowers, there's a whistleblower chart in Chinese astrology. If you're born in the Chinese year of the Boar and you're a Cancerian, listen, Edward Snowden is that chart. Julian Assange is that chart. The Dalai Lama is that chart. Corey Feldman is that chart. It's
very interesting.
Bizarre. 12 years. Very interesting. It's crazy. But, you know, there are patterns in this. J.K. Rowling is a Snake Leo. She gets Daniel Radcliffe to play Harry Potter, Snake Leo. And think about all the lions and the snake symbolism in the movies, in the books. It's crazy.
Yeah. Snake Leo, that's an interesting combination. Like, mythologically, what a lion is and what a snake represents, that's really interesting, especially in terms of magic. That's really cool.
Absolutely. This is the sort of stuff. Actually, what I've been doing recently, and we're kind of off track in terms of the interview, but we're here, so let's talk about it. I've been looking into the Marvel movies a lot, and the symbolism that they use. If you look at, like, most of the characters have symbols on their, like the downward triangle for Iron Man, the six symbol, the six circles for Thor, the Eye of Horus for Loki when he has his staff, which is the Eye of Horus symbol. These symbols are very, very interesting in terms of what's happening today, and in terms of what's happening. I was thinking about actually making a video about this so that I could talk to people about the fact that Marvel Universe, they kind of know what's happening in the world.
You should. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there used to be. I'm a little bit older than you, I think.
You're not. You're only a few years. You're only 2 years older than me.
Oh, am I? Oh, okay. There used to be on YouTube a whole field of study called synchro mysticism.
Oh, I never heard that.
Yeah, you're going to love that, because they show how in films and even kids' cartoons, out of the creative process of the collective human unconscious, there's great wisdom there. And you look into the people who've done the cartoons and done the films, and they probably really don't know what they've just gone, oh, I'm going to choose this symbol, and it just happens to be exactly the right symbol.
It's not coincidence, Richard. I don't think for a second it's coincidence.
You think they're doing it deliberately?
You watch those, even if you look back at the old Xmen movies, and you look at the symbolism, the layering of symbolism. I studied screenwriting at university. You look at the layering of what they've put down there, and if the coincidental images that happen to have on the walls, it all feeds into the story. It all feeds into the symbolism of what's happening. The X-Men comics from back in the day, they know exactly. Again, I suppose it's still Marvel, but they know what they're putting out there. It's almost like a form of subliminal programming. It's crazy. Even, I don't know if you remember, we are similar age. Do you remember the Mysterious Cities of Gold, the cartoon?
Yes. Yeah. I remember the title, I think.
It was an amazing cartoon. I loved it as a kid in the mid '80s. And
was it French or something? And we had it in English, obviously, but it was French, right?
Yeah, it was originally French. Yeah, and they've done a remake in 2012. I think there's a remake of the thing. Animation, kind of a 3D form. Not like a Wallace and Gromit, but it's like a digital. You know, like Shrek was. I don't know what they call it, but like the Shrek was done. Anyway, so in that, what was interesting, first of all, is the Mysterious Cities of Gold was created by similar sort of group of people to the people that created the X-Men. Although it wasn't Marvel, it wasn't Stan Lee, but it was similar people that produced it. And again, the symbolism just across the board was really interesting in terms of, this is the storyline, look at the symbols that we're putting in there. And if you Googled what those symbols meant, for example, the two circles that were stuck together, can't remember the name of it now, it basically was all relating to religious symbols. Some might say satanic symbols, but it's very interesting of the subliminal stuff that was going on. I mean, right. I think I want to make more videos on that, because I think people might.
You should, because this is, I mean, it's like in YouTube 2012. This was huge, and it was so popular. And then there's a guy called Sea Lion, and he was the one who was making most of the synchro-mysticism videos. I loved them. You watch them now, it's a bit dated. Obviously, his mic is awful. The editing software is shit, but it's fascinating because it's looking at patterns, and you just think there's too much there to be accounted for by coincidence. There's only so much you can say, oh, well, that's random chance. And then you just go, no, this is not. There has to be something else going on here. So I would love it if you did that. That would be really cool.
I mean, the Captain America movies are all about the New World Order. I mean, they talk about it. The Antman movies are about quantum field. And I personally think there's a lot of talk about nanotechnology in the Antman movies. At one point, when Michelle Pfeiffer's character has been stuck in the quantum field, where he just comes out, she says to her daughter, Evangeline Lilly's character, I put an antenna into Antman, and that's how I was able to transmit myself into him and get him to do what I needed him to do. Which to me, it sounds a bit like nanotechnology in terms of what some of the people have been talking about, vaccines and nanotechnology that's in there, that will be like a receiving technology. Who knows? But it was very interesting to me. Anyway, let's leave that aside. Let's come back to you.
Okay.
I'm very conscious of the fact that I wanted to make this about you, not about that. That's something else that I've been thinking about and I will work on.
Right.
But I do want to ask you some questions. Can you tell us about your life when you were younger, and whatever you're prepared to tell us about the making of you, and that's turned you into this teacher that you are now?
Yeah, I'm writing about it at the moment, and hopefully before the lockdown ends, if it ends, the book will be ready to be edited, and then I think I'm just going to self-publish it. I'm just going to get it out there. The particular thing that I'd be known for would be Spartan Life Coach. That was formed in Malaysia. It was a culmination of bad events, really. When I was a kid, I was raised in a very, very difficult environment that didn't nurture growth. In fact, it punished growth, or indeed any expression of individualism. And so I was quite traumatized by that. There was various instances of psychological abuse was a constant pressure. Then there'd be physical abuse and sexual abuse on top of that. Over time, that led me to being involved in narcissistically abusive relationships. I was then, at the age of 30, I was involved with a girl. She was Chinese. She lived her whole life here, but her family was from Malaysia, from Kuala Lumpur. And towards the end of the relationship, where I couldn't handle the abuse anymore and I was ready to leave, her mother pulled me to one side and said, I'm ashamed to tell you that my daughter has used magic on you. And I said, that's okay. I don't believe in that shit. Sorry, it's fine. And she said, well, you should be careful, because she's used a Bomo spell, which Bomo is Malay black magic. And she put period blood in my rice, done a spell and fed it to me. And it was a love spell to bind me to her. I split up with her, and then so
the magic didn't work then?
Sorry?
So the magic didn't work then?
I did split up with her, but very bad things happened to me as I tried to pull away from her. Life got very, very dark very, very quickly, and I entered what I would call a kind of a hellscape. So I was in this reality, but the reality was just hell. It was just torture, being alive. And I felt like the more I pulled away from her, the more likely it would become that I would end up choosing to kill myself. And so I thought, okay, I'm in this now. The magic that she's used comes from Malaysia. I'll go to Malaysia and find somebody to remove it. I did this non-naively. I did this also knowing as a psychologist that even if you don't believe in a belief system, you can still operate within a belief system and get a result.
Yeah.
Belief is never absolute. Even an atheist is never a true atheist. A theist is never a true theist. There's always an element of the willful suspension of disbelief in any belief system.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll go, because if it is magic, I need a magician. And if it's only unconscious symbology, I still have to go and do it anyway. I can't just stay at home and pretend. So I went and I found a Sufi mystic. He's quite famous. And he agreed to help me after I fired arrows into a target, which was his test for me. He made me use an old Malaysian wooden bow. And I had to stand there. And
the mystic was?
His name, you mean?
Yeah.
His name is Pak Din.
Just in case somebody might be interested and somebody might...
Yeah, sure. His name is Pak Din. There are a few Pak Dins, obviously, from Malaysia, but if you look on YouTube for Pakdin, and if you see a guy doing silat or teaching horseback archery, because he believes that because the prophet advocated 3 ways of staying healthy: swimming, archery, and horseback riding. So he believes it's part of his faith to teach people how to ride horses and fire arrows from the horses. He also believes that when the apocalypse comes, only the people who are archers can kill the demons of the apocalypse.
Mm.
Of course, why wouldn't he believe that? And so that's why he had me firing arrows at a target. And when I hit the target, he said, okay, now you know how to kill the demons of the apocalypse. He said, I will help you because you have a love spell on you. He agreed with me that he was like, yeah, you do have a love spell. It's broken your heart and it's killed your spirit, your samangat. He said, I'll pray for you and that'll heal you. And he said, but I'm also going to teach you silat. So I thought, oh, cool, I'm going to learn a martial art. That's awesome. I was ready to do that. Spend 6 months in Malaysia learning a martial art. Awesome. And I said, when do we start? And he said, tonight, I'm going to start teaching you in your dreams. And I went, oh, fucking hell. You're one of them, are you, mate? All right. I'm glad I flew all this fucking way. So I went back home, went asleep, and lo and behold, he turned up with his crew in my dreams. And there was like a series of visions that went on night after night, different tests, different things I had to do. Then from that point forward, I started shooting YouTube videos, and the focus became helping people overcome narcissistic abuse. I didn't see him again when I was living in Malaysia for another 2 years. I didn't feel like I wanted to contact him again, which is, I think, looking back, it's really strange. I never checked with him. I never even called him and said, Pak Din, you came to my house in my sleep, and then we fought demons in heaven, because those were the dreams. We would like jump through. It wasn't the Christian heaven that we were fighting in. There was the 7 heavens. It was the Islamic heaven we were fighting, and I called them demons, but they called them jinn. And we had jinn in this story. That heaven was infected with jinn that we had to clean out.
I was born and raised Muslim, so I'm aware of.
You're familiar.
The jinn, yeah.
Yeah. So you're familiar with
with my astrology and the tarot. When I would predict things and they would happen.
Yeah.
My family were never really entirely on board. They like, one of my sisters would always say, "You realize you're channeling the jinn, right? You realize that's what you're doing." And I don't know. My sort of beliefs are entirely open to that sort of stuff. I've just sort of gone along with whatever life's put in front of me. I've sort of gone along with it.
Yeah, that's my attitude to it. People say, well, what do you really believe? And I'm like, well, I don't fucking know. I put my socks on in the morning and I get through the day the same as anybody else. I don't know what it is because I'm in it. I can't know. I'm in the game. I didn't create the game. I'm not God and I'm not a jinn, so I'm in this. But the interesting thing with this is I become the guilty pleasure for a lot of Muslims who have been through narcissistic abusive relationships when they know that I'm interested in tarot, when they know that I've had this experience, because it's a bit of a grey area in Islam, isn't it? It's not like in Christianity, this would be wrong. Tarot would be wrong. But in Islam, it's like, well, there are jinn. You can talk to the jinn, but you're not supposed, like Sufism is, well, for some, it's absolutely haram. But for a lot of people, it's like, well, maybe we should. Some people are super open to it. So I get a lot of people asking me about it.
It was basically, I started astrology at 9 years old because my mum had ordered this book from the Reader's Digest, or they left it behind, or I don't know. But I just became obsessed with it and just read it. It was like, wow, I'm a sheep born in the time of the sheep, so I'm kind of a pure sign, Aquarius. So I just became obsessed with it. Then that led on to the tarot, that led on to all the runes, that led on to dream interpretation, all these other things that I do. But it's interesting that my mum always had an interest, and a lot of Muslim people do have an interest. But yet, when it comes down to it, they say, "Oh no, that's not really allowed, or that's evil, freaky stuff." But there is an interest there. So as a child, I was like, I don't know, because I always wanted to please my mum and please the people around me. My primary F is fawn, and secondary, I think, is flight. Right. So I was a people pleaser. And so therefore I was like, my mum loves this, she loves Bollywood, she loves music, she loves acting, she loves this. So I did everything that was making my siblings and my family happy. And astrology was one of those things. So I was always really confused, like, I don't know why they're saying this when they clearly love it.
Yes, they clearly love it. That's the impression I've got, is like, there's this fascination, but then if you ask the question and go, is it okay? They're like, no, it's not okay. But let's talk about it anyway. The majority of my astro tarot work that I do that at the moment, well, maybe not now, but in recent time is in LA and in Dubai. I do other places as well, but mostly it's in London, obviously. But so in Dubai they love it. I'm totally not surprised at all. Not surprised, because I think as an outsider, let me be clear, as somebody who's interpreting what I've seen, is you have that yang and that yin element, and the yang element, the patriarchal element, is the wagging finger, thou shalt not. But the yin element, if you come at it from the Sufi mystic perception, it's unique to Islam. It's not there in Judaism. It's not. I'm trying to write about it at the moment. I'm like, am I going to get a fatwa placed on me for writing this stuff? But so I've been really careful to be like, I'm not a scholar. I'm not speaking from the inside. I'm speaking from the outside looking in. There's a unique cosmology there. And it's written into the source code of the project. Like, I can't undo that. I'm only here because of that experience. So when people bring it up with me, I'm like, I can't cut that out now. I can't say, no, that's not a part of me, because it really is a part of me now. It's a part of the whole way I see life, the whole perception of everything. But that whole thing was beyond religion. It was beyond any kind of dogma. The people who came to me in the dream, though there were Sufi mystics in Malaysia, Sufi mysticism goes back to the Hindu Buddhist roots. And it's actually about the core of what humanity is and where we're going to go to next. That's all they really cared about.
So how does this relate to you and your development? I mean, remember the question I kind of was asking was about you and how did you turn into this teacher that you are? So that relationship with that girl, when she placed this black magic thing on you, and you sort of found your way out of that. Was the teaching connected to that? Was it some sort of giving back, or how was that connected?
I understood it as transactional. I understood it as the nature of the visions were like, so they took me out of the earth and they took me to the stars. I'll just tell you naively what the visions were. And they said to me, like, it's very important that you tell the truth. The truth is important now. Can you tell the truth? And I said, yeah, of course I can. And they went, that's good, because if you fuck up, we're going to kill you. And I went, oh. So then in vision speak, not in words, it was, who is your mother? And I showed them a picture of my mother, and they said, who's your mother really? And I gave them memories of my mother and abuse. Who is your father? So I showed them a picture, and they went, no. Who is your father really? And so I had to show. And there was this, they were interested in the intergenerationalness of it. The long and the short of it was, in my impression, was, look, what has been before has to die. It cannot be again. We'll help you, but it's not for nothing. You have to help us. We have a cause. And I was like, well, what's your cause? And it was to fight the demons of the apocalypse. And I went, I can't, if you want me to not lie, I can't help you with that, because I don't believe you. I don't believe there's demons. I'm not a Christian. I don't believe there's an apocalypse. I think these are desert dweller people probably eating mushrooms or drinking the poison of a cactus plant, and they've seen trippy shit, and then they write it down and they call it the Book of Revelations or whatever. I don't believe you. And they said, okay, you don't have to believe that, but do you want to save people from pain? And I said, yes, that's fine. Do we want to help people with trauma? Yes, that's fine. When people are being attacked and abused, do you want to protect them? Yes, of course. Okay, then we can make an agreement. And it was kind of, so it was a big part of the process. The other part of that was that I was told I was to help people make vehicles. These vehicles, the first vehicle I was shown was a spaceship that had Sanskrit written on it, like your T-shirt.
Yeah.
So there's spaceships out there in the unconscious somewhere that have Pali and Sanskrit written on them, and it's spells that allow them to transcend dimensions, right? So I said, oh yeah, okay, I'll try and help people to do this. So for the last 6 years, my recurring dream is that I'm an engineer who builds craft in which people can fly and travel and move, and that's my job. And I that's what I signed up for. Now I'm not heartbroken. Now I'm not sad, but I am an engineer, and I have to build craft, and I help people, and that's it.
And can you see, so from where I'm sat, I can see how that completely relates to the work that you've been doing. By the way, before I
I'm glad that you can, because some people look at me like I'm talking another language.
Well, you know, I don't know if you know this, but do you know that so one of the sort of pioneers of the Freemasonic movement was a guy called Albert Pike, who also started the KKK.
Right.
People don't know, but he and a lot of the high-level Freemasons learn Sanskrit and learn ancient Chinese, because these cultures held many secrets that they wanted to learn about, they want to know about, because they want the secret knowledge. They don't want anybody else to have the secret knowledge. So Albert Pike learned Sanskrit himself, so that he could decode the sacred texts and really understand what the Vedas, not just the Ayurveda, but all the Vedas are talking about. So that's very interesting that there was Sanskrit written on the spaceship. Symbolically, the work that you're doing, I mean, from where I'm sat, on a micro level, you're talking about narcissism and how it relates to relationships and how people can develop. But on a governmental level, on a wider scale, on a macro level, it relates completely to the sort of extreme behaviors that we're currently seeing now due to this coronavirus situation. And we've been heading there for a while. And so I can completely see how that dream relates to reality right now. And the work and how it's connected to the work that you do. So
there was other parts of the dream when we were going through the seven heavens to chase after the jinn who infected the seven heavens. You could shoot them with an arrow and it would kill them. But the other thing I could do in the dreams was I could speak an old version of Arabic. I can't speak any version of Arabic in real life, but I could say a word in old Arabic and it would hit the demon and bind the demon, and then it would slowly crush it. Just go. And I was like, wow, I'm not creative enough to come up with stuff like that. That's not, but it's interesting because what I do with people is I help them to find words that are binding spells for evil spirits, because if you can name it, you can tame it. So when you don't know what it is and you don't have a word for it, it's overwhelming. But if I come along and I go, oh, that's the dubba of the fubba, instantly you have the leverage to get some power over it. So there's a lot of metaphor that translates, I think, to the work.
I think that's very powerful. If you can get the right words and the right sort of if you can get the right words into the person's head that you're speaking to in a certain way, Metaphor is very, very powerful.
Definitely. It's interesting saying about the Masons learning Sanskrit and ancient Chinese. I keep coming back to the Bible because that's what I was raised with, and I was like, ugh, I hate all that shit. But as I come back to the Bible, I keep thinking, you know, I really have no chance of penetrating the mystery here unless I'm prepared to learn Greek and Hebrew and Aramaic, because I'm learning a fifth-hand translation, often through Muslim scholars. Most people don't know that. It's actually Muslim scholars who gave us the translations that we've got. And I'm like, this is a fifth-hand translation for a word. I need the first word. Otherwise, I don't know the slightest bit of nuance. And we, as the non-initiated, will totally miss the point of what this is about.
Yeah, I've had that sort of debate. I wrote a play in 2008 called, originally it was called Masks, but I changed it to Religion of Love, about a gay Muslim and sort of coming out, that whole story. It's everywhere now, but back at that time it wasn't everywhere. It was I was one of the early people that did that. And as part of it, I was really looking into the Islamic texts, the not just the Quran, but also the other ones as well. The other texts that came about from in observation of the Prophet's life.
The Hadith.
So Hadith, the Hadith. I came down to the conclusion, because there were so many different interpretations of the handful of lines that talked about homosexuality and how it was wrong. Is it wrong? What does this really mean? You have to go back to the original Arabic to actually understand, because otherwise it's just an interpretation. There was loads of I mean, I won't go into the religion side of it, but basically what I'm saying is that unless you do it yourself, unless you bother to take that crazy amount of time to do that, we're just not going to know. And personally, I've got other things to do, so I just thought to myself, I just need to reconcile that this is the way that things are, and they're not going to change. And that was kind of the gist of the play as well. But what's interesting is, when I started the play, I was in a very different mindset in terms of my religion. I was up until 2006, I used to keep all my fasts. It's Ramadan now, so I used to fast, and since 2006, I think I've kept one fast, because I had a bunch of Muslim friends who sort of got me to come to the mosque, and I thought, okay, if I'm going to go to the mosque, fine, I'll keep a fast. So I did. That was about 3 years ago. But by the end of the play, I was in a very different mindset because of all the research that I had done. So, but everybody to themselves, you know, I don't denigrate anybody's religious beliefs, but I also have my understanding, which is that we don't know anything. I honestly think we don't know anything. So all I can do is feel my way. And that's what I do. Hence why I don't consider myself to be anything. You know, these are the 7 chakras. This is a Hindu prayer. I've got the Om on my back. I've got Ganesh over there. You know, I kind of believe in everything and nothing. Yeah.
I think it's when you start to challenge it and you start to pull apart what we know from what we think, it actually becomes a lot more interesting, for one. So I was in a similar place, not 2008, but 2009. What got me back to reading the Bible again was I was going to write a book on it. I was in the process of writing a book on it. And one of the first things that I wanted to cover in the book was that this is actually a polytheistic religion. And the proof is there in Genesis, because they keep talking, the God that is God says us. He doesn't say I. He keeps saying Adonai, which is us. And not only us, plural, men, it actually has the implicit, apparently, etymologically, of men and women. Us, we men and women who've created the earth. Us, we men and if you read it like that, instantly the tone changes. Instantly. A multiplicity, a tribe of men and women are talking, not one God male figure. That was one of the things I wanted to discuss in this book. And there's similarly with Islam. When I was in Malaysia, I met a girl. She was the one who introduced me to Pak Din, and we had a relationship, and she wanted me to convert. And so I studied a little, and I started talking to my Muslim friends, like, oh, today I learned Islam means submission, and a Muslim is one who submits. And they went, no, it doesn't. That's not what it means. I went, you need to look at, you need to go up. And I can't convert to Islam. That's impossible. I revert to Islam because it's the truth, because I'm already a Muslim. And they went, you're not a Muslim. I went, in the eyes of Islam, I only exist in accordance with God's will. Only that which is willed by God can exist, which means everything is Muslim. And they're like, I'm pretty sure that's Haram, bro. I'm pretty sure that's Haram. I'm like, you need to look. But when I was speaking to people about that, there's a much more, like, I wouldn't call it psychedelic, but it's much more all-encompassing perception that you get. It's not dualistic. It's not me versus you. It's like everything is everything from that point of view. Everything is part of this thing, and you can never not be a part of it, which is different to the flavor you would typically get when you're standing outside of it and you're hearing like a version of a version of a version. And I'm like, no, just go back to the basic principles. Everything gets real quiet and real clear when we stick to the basic principles. It's when we're having an argument that's 2,000 years old and he said this and you did that, then it's confusing. But if you go back to basic principles, it all makes sense.
And pointless and unhelpful. It's pointless. It's just with the here and now and what's relevant.
Right.
Not to say that wouldn't have been relevant at the time, but those same, look, humanity is humanity. People still behave that way. But when it just sort of goes to a knee-jerk reaction thing and people just start arguing to the point where nothing is getting resolved, we're not moving forward with anything, then it's just...
Yeah, I think that's the irony in the religion, because that is the dark speck that the prophet spoke about in the human heart. That's the dark speck in the human heart, which is the ego, which ruins everything. So you were warned about that by the prophet you follow, and you're doing exactly what he told you not to do. So I just recently was looking up the story. It's a beautiful poetic story that an angel, possibly Gabriel, came, took the prophet's heart and cleaned the dark speck of the ego and then replaced his heart. And I went, that's beautiful. So I went and looked it up. The polemics, the arguments, the rage, people are furious with each other for believing this. I'm like, it's a beautiful story. Like, just let it be that. And then, there's a guy, I looked at a guy online and he's going, that's a ridiculous idea. Open heart surgery didn't exist back then. And I'm like, dude, that's not the point. That's not, but what can you say? Anyway, we've probably drifted from what you were asking.
We really have, but it's okay. You know what? Let the interview be what it wants to be. So I saw recently that you've talked about your ayahuasca experience. I haven't watched that video yet. I saw it. It was like 58 minutes. I thought, I don't have the time right now. I'll watch it soon. But
I have other things in my life.
Well, the thing is, listen. One of the things I was going to say to you is, where do you get the time to do all your videos? Like, I get out of bed. And I'm going to start my day, and I check my YouTube. Oh, there you go. There's Richard Grannon with another video. I start watching one video. The next thing you know, he's got another video. And I spend my day watching Richard Grannon videos. And you have to make these videos. Where do you get the time to live your life when you're making all these videos all the time?
I know. I'm just, what do they call people who pump out a lot of stuff? I can't remember. There's a guy, I used to work in martial arts. And I've been doing like courses, new books, new videos, 3-4 a month. And they were like, we do 3 or 4 a year. What the fuck is wrong with you?
I don't know how you do it. Although astrologically it does make sense. The horse sign is like the political rebel, just a rebel in general, actually. But they do work hard, and they have the workaholism, but it's kind of a technique to not deal with shit, basically.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so, it's a workaholism as an avoidance of emotional pain.
It's one of the 4 F's as well, isn't it? Isn't it the flight, maybe? Or I
think it's flight. I think workaholism would be flight. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about the CPTSD, Pete Walker's work. Yeah, generally. Okay, let's try and come back on track a little, because I've got all these things that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, sure.
How much time do you actually have?
I'm fine for another 40 minutes or so. I've got nothing on.
Okay, cool.
I've already released 2 YouTube videos today. I think that's enough.
Oh my God. Okay, so all right. So let's come back to you. I want to know, and I think that a lot of people want to know more about you and your life that's turned you into this person. That because I personally look up to you, and I think that you've done so much great work, and I would love to. In my own way, do my own sort of positive work for people to sort of have to develop and improve themselves, and however I can help. It's always different. Different people have different skill sets. So whatever I can do, whatever I can bring to the table, I want to do that, and I want to be able to have an impact the way that you have. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what has made you into that person. That's kind of the thread of my questions that I'm asking you. So you talked about a little bit about your childhood. It doesn't come as a surprise to any of us that you had that sort of childhood. How did you find the resources that helped you heal your the part of your soul that needed healing? Let's put it that way, because it's probably quite many things. But how did you do that? How did you find it? Like, what were the things that you found? What were the resources? How did you do it?
The particular torture chamber that I was assigned to when I manifested into this reality actually had a library in it. So my unbelievably, my childhood home was full of psychology and spirituality. My parents believed in magic. I think that they believed it was something that you did to other people. It didn't bring much of it into their own lives. So my father was very, very interested in spirituality, psychology, and philosophy, and so was my mother, but it was right there in the house. And I knew that the reality that I was in was wrong. It was broken. I think as a child, I had a very Gnostic worldview. I was like, there's something wrong here. This is not, I think I've rocked up to the wrong zone. I must be in the wrong fucking dimension here. And so I needed a way out. And the first book I picked up was the Chinese oracle, was the I-Ching. It was right there on the shelf. The books of Osho, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, Carl Jung. Was it anything that was like 60s or 70s self-help, all the Californian stuff, psychology, self-help, Lyle Wilson, the Occult, Colin Wilson, it's all there. And to escape my reality, I went into books. I learned to read. And so by the age of something stupid, like I got tested at age 8 and they found I had the reading age of a 14-year-old. So I was really advanced in reading age. And I just started consuming pretty advanced stuff at a very young age, trying to fast forward. Like, I thought I'd leave this reality by like age 15 or something. I was like, I'm quick. I'm on a mission. I'm busy. I gotta read more. And I thought I'd just like jump hyperspace or something and be out of it. So I read a lot, thinking that was going to get me out of the prison that I was in. And I read very, very broadly. And then at age 13, somebody gave me an edition of Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. At the same time, I was reading Silence of the Lambs, Sherlock Holmes, and A Clockwork Orange over and over again. And so I probably was on the verge of full-blown psychopathy, with highly pronounced narcissistic traits, because my father was so abusive. He's only just recently out of jail. He went to jail for 11 years eventually for raping one of his daughter from a different family. So he's really bad man. But he was never around. So I was internalizing a father figure in a abusive environment that would be a savior through the eyes of a 12-year-old. So I needed a very strong bad man to come and fight the demons who were attacking me. So I worshipped Hannibal Lecter because he was intelligent and capable and violent. Alex from A Clockwork Orange, Sherlock Holmes, an autistic, drug-addicted psychopath, but brilliant genius. And this character from The Dark Half by Stephen King, who's this like American gangster psychopath, who's the dark side of the author who's writing.
They're all kind of psychopathic. All those characters are psychopathic and no empathy.
Yeah, no empathy. Because you couldn't have empathy in my environment. If I wanted to escape, empathy had to be crushed. And when I say it was a criminal environment, there was abuse in the childhood home, but we were raised in Portugal in the 80s, and it was the timeshare boom, and people were being killed over timeshare deals. I was taken to when I was very young, I was taken to meetings over timeshare, and there was Americans in the meetings, big fat American guys, and I always remember them because they wore sunglasses inside. They were Italians. They were Italian Americans, and they'd come over to clean the money. That's how much money these were in Portugal and in Spain. Most of the timeshare was run by a company called McInerney, which I know sounds Irish, but they're actually American. Four Seasons, the Four Seasons company is American. So they were coming over and applying pressure, and kids were being killed. They were being raped and killed over timeshare deals. My girlfriend, when I was 12, I had like a 13-year-old girlfriend. She was kidnapped to come into my house, and they took her for a drive, and then they threw her out and down a hill. She was like thrown down a hill. My sister's best friend from school, who was 10, over a timeshare deal gone bad. This is very disturbing for people who are listening to it. It's a famous case, long before the Madeleine McCann case. They kidnapped his daughter, his 10-year-old daughter. They raped her and they strangled her to death. So it was, my tennis coach was shot to death. That was normal for me. That's the environment I was raised in. I was like, this world is not safe. People are crazy. It's all criminal. Kids aren't safe. Kids are going to be molested because they're weak. That was the child's interpretation. So I needed strength. And so that's where I look to, like an imaginary sort of a profile of what a human being, a male father figure could be.
Earlier, when you were talking about the religions, and you mentioned they said us instead of I, man. I was going to ask you if you know about Esther Hicks and
sorry, can I just tell you something? When I said that, my TV turned itself on, which is never done before.
Wow.
When I said the thing, us as a tribe, men and women, my TV just popped on for no fucking reason whatsoever. Sorry, mate. Esther Hicks, you were going to say.
Yeah. And the teachings of Abraham. Do you know about her? And
vaguely, I'm not particularly familiar with it.
Because basically, what it is she channels a group of entities, not just one, but she channels a group of them, and and it's infinite intelligence. A lot of the law of attraction work that we have now has come from her and her teachings, because she's been doing it since the early 80s. She's been channeling this entity since then. Well, not solely from her. I mean, a lot of the Napoleon Hill stuff is the same stuff. The Seth books by Jane Roberts is the same stuff. So this stuff has been around historically, but to this generation, since the 80s, basically, it's been Esther Hicks and Jerry Hicks, who's passed away now, her husband. But they do this work, and they talk about how it's infinite intelligence comes to her through a group of entities. The reason why I'm saying this and relating this to what you've just said is the experience that you had is law of attraction. Just, it could be a law of attraction if you believe in that sort of stuff, because you had a family environment that was that toxic. You would attract to yourself more and more toxicity and toxic people and toxic experiences, because that's all that was in your head energetically. You hold something, then you're going to attract more and more to it. So in the same way, I had an upbringing that was very, very unsafe. And I've been reading these self-help books and these other books just to sort of sort my head out. But if we stay in that environment, it can only get you so far. Yeah. So, which epigenetics now, the science of epigenetics is also looking into right now, the Bruce Lipton's work, which is really interesting to me, because now it looks like there's now a scientific basis for this spiritual concept that people have been talking about for years. Anyway, so I think that maybe the law of attraction had an impact there in terms of your life. But then when you create safety for yourself, which is what the CPTSD work is about, then you can start attracting very, very different experiences.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. If your self-perception, your self-image is damaged, if you don't feel very good about yourself, I mean, you can explain it at multiple levels. There's law of attraction, visualization type stuff, and then straight psychology. If you think you're a disgusting, worthless worm, and then you're in a relationship with somebody who treats you well, you're going to be like, oh, this is boring and weird. I don't like this. So you get with somebody who treats you like a disgusting, worthless worm, and you go, I knew it. It's true. That's good. I wanted this. I want my beliefs confirmed. I think humans are perverse creatures in that we prioritize having our pre-existing beliefs confirmed over actual happiness. We would always take having pre-existing beliefs confirmed over the actual pleasure of being happy.
Mm-hmm. But how does that relate to you and then your experience? So far we've got to well, we've kind of gone backwards a little bit. You were talking about your being the sort of childhood experience of being in Portugal and how tough that was. But then as you got older and you hit your teens, what happened then? And how did you did you manage to climb out of some of that and away from the toxicity?
It was a strange thing in Portugal. I had it was very unstable. It was very chaotic, and at times it got dangerous. But I also had a lot of freedom, and I didn't have any sense of any racial boundaries or any generational boundaries or any class boundaries at all, because expat communities abroad, especially in the 80s, like, they were all swingers, they were all drinkers, and it was just everybody everywhere all the time. Even though Portugal itself outside of the expat community is Catholic and quite rigid and quite tough in that regard, we also there was Portuguese within who would come inside of the expat community who were the outsiders of the Portuguese community, if that makes sense. So you just had a bunch of misfits: Brits, South Africans, Germans, Portuguese, people from Angola, Dutch, whatever. And I was, by the time I was 13, I'd already lost my virginity. The girls that I was hanging around with would have been like 16, 17 years old. I had a Danish girlfriend. I had a Portuguese girl. So I then, from that environment, my parents made a decision to send me to a boarding school in England, like some fucking Harry Potter spooky old boarding school. So
wait, did you say in the UK or in Portugal?
No, they sent me to a boarding school in Somerset, in Taunton. Yeah. A real religious, super conservative boarding school. And that became its own trauma. Like, that was traumatic again, because it was extremely restrictive. It was uniforms and bedtimes. And for me, it was really disconcerting, because they put me in with a load of other 13-year-olds. I'm 13, they're 13, but we ain't the same 13. Like, I've already been up to whatever the hell I want, going out to clubs. There's a famous club in Portugal called Cadok, or it was famous in the 90s, because it had like a capacity of 5,000 people. It's one of the places like Two Unlimited performed there. You remember Two Unlimited?
I do.
Back in the day.
Oh no!
So, yeah, that's it. That's it. I actually saw them perform that live down there. And then I'm with all these like rich farmers' kids, and it's very white in every sense of that word. My mum in Portugal, she would work with a gay hairdresser who was a fashion designer, and he ran fashion shows, and I'd help the girls get changed. I was like 10, 11 years old in this hyper-sexualized environment, surrounded by Portuguese, French, and Brazilian models. Like, my hormones were going through the roof. And then they just stick me in like all boys. It was an all boys section of a boarding school. There was a girls section, which I eventually made my way over to. But it was confusing for me, because I didn't know, and I was taller than everybody else, which meant I'd get hit a lot, which meant I ducked a lot. So they ended up with this weird stoop in my life, because if I was too tall, somebody had smacked me. So there was that, and it was violent.
Hey, why would they hit you? Because you're taller?
The teachers would hit me.
Oh, I think it's students.
Yeah. The other lads in school generally didn't mess with me too much. Sometimes a little bit. Like some of the 17, 18-year-olds would give me a hiding. But it was violent. And then I moved up from there, moved to a school in Birkenhead. Again, violent. Liverpool and Birkenhead. I would just be like, why is everybody so miserable? I didn't understand what being an English person was, which is misery. We just fucking love misery. Everybody's just miserable, and they're like fighting and drinking until they're out their brains and then punching each other in the face. That was traumatic, because I am English and I am from here, but I was totally disconnected to it. And I didn't get the culture. I didn't get the sense of humor. I didn't get any of it. My thing was like, you like girls, right? So just go and talk to girls and hang out and just dance and and nobody was into that. They wanted to punch each other. So in response to that environment, my capacity to violence grew commensurate with the need. I needed to fight. I needed to hit people because there was no conversation, and they weren't on the same vibe as me. They weren't on the same thing as me. They wanted to be aggressive. They wanted to bully me. So I fought. And then I was good at it, so I hardwired to it. I got positive reinforcement from violence.
Had you already started martial arts training at this point?
Yeah. That my parents, when I was younger, thought that I was gay, and because that was unacceptable, they forced me to go to martial arts school. Because I don't know if you know this, but gayness is an illness, and the antidote to the illness is jiu-jitsu. It's cuddling other men.
I'm starting jiu-jitsu soon. As soon as this lockdown's over, the first thing I'm going to do is start jiu-jitsu.
Do you mean Brazilian jiu-jitsu?
Brazilian jiu-jitsu, yeah.
It's fantastic. You're going to have a really
if it is an antidote, I'll let you know. If it cures me.
Yeah. You'd be like, actually, just want to let you know, your parents were right. This is actually the cure. You just didn't do it long enough. You just didn't give it enough commitment.
Actually, then what martial arts did you do?
I started out with Shito-ryu karate, and then I did spirit combat jiu-jitsu. And at some point, this thing that I was being forced to do that I hated, because I hated physical contact with other human beings. I didn't want to punch people and hurt people. And then I think I did like a martial arts demonstration with the nunchaku. I got good with the nunchucks, and I was good. And I was like, oh, I can get applause for doing this. Okay. So then it became an obsession. I was totally obsessed. Did ninjutsu, aikido, jeet kune do, silat, kali, muay thai. Obviously, we were young men during the MMA boom. Mm-hmm. So MMA was taking off, and so that was a thing to be done. Whereabouts in England are you from?
London, South London.
London, yeah. So I went to university in Birmingham. Obviously, London and Birmingham were the hubs in the late 90s for MMA growth.
Yeah, I did gymnastics instead. I didn't do, because I started as a child, the only extracurricular activity we were allowed to have was going to the mosque. And even then, towards half the time we went to the park and just hung out there instead.
Right. So we're going to the mosque.
Exactly. Even if it pissed down with rain, we didn't care. We would rather go to the park than go to and this is terrible, isn't it? Not that there's anything wrong with mosques. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just, we had more fun at the park.
Oh no, all my Muslim friends, whether it was in England or in Malaysia, whenever they went somewhere and they didn't want to say where they'd been and somebody asked them, they'd just say, oh, we're at the mosque.
At the mosque.
And I'm like, oh, it was a funny looking mosque we were in. I don't remember it being a mosque. Yeah. So anyway, that becomes a standard excuse, doesn't it?
So I couldn't do any of the, because I was naturally talented at dance.
Right.
Just naturally, I remember being in primary school and all the pretty girls on here, I was completely invisible, except for when it came to the skipping. I was somehow good at skipping, and I was good at the dance. So the pretty girls wanted to dance with me when it came to the dance. Otherwise, I was completely invisible. But I didn't know. It was like I wasn't even allowed to sort of think about what I was good at or what I could do or wanted to do. I went to all-boys school as well, by the way, for high school. And it was the second worst school in the whole of Britain, according to Evening Standard, in 95. Wow. And I left high school in 96.
Whereabouts in London was that?
It's in a place called Thornton Heath in Croydon.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I used to work as like a motivational speaker in schools. And London is, compared to anything else in the country, nothing compares to London, man. Jesus, it's almost like an environment where you can't learn. Like adults who wanted to learn couldn't learn in those places.
It was honestly, I mean, no exaggeration, it was like a prison. It was an all-boys school. It was an absolute prison. And somebody set up a group on Facebook, the Ingram Boys group. The school was called Ingram High School for Boys. If you just Google that, the documents that come up is crazy. I actually won a one world competition when I was 13, which kept the school open for an additional 2 years, I believe. I don't know if that's true. I was just kind of secretly told by the teachers. It probably isn't true, but we kept it open for a few more years, but they eventually did close down. Anyway, the reason why I mention this is because I know what it's like to be in that physically aggressive environment where there aren't girls to sort of let out the tension or anything like that. So everything just sort of becomes aggression on the inside, and it was horrible. There were fights all the time, and me being completely passive and just innocent and naive. Even I got into fights because you had to fight, and it was just horrible, traumatizing environment. But anyway, so you did martial arts, and that sort of helped you, and that sort of got you. See, now at least you had that, and you had that ability to fight your way out.
Yes, and also it was symbolic because you would be known for it. And I was smart as a kid. I figured out that the martial arts schools wanted to recruit new students, and the schools wanted martial arts demonstrations. So I would organize the martial arts schools coming and do demonstrations that I was affiliated with. It's not hard to impress 15 and 16-year-olds. And so they'd be super impressed, and they'd be like, oh, Rich knows the teacher, he's trained with them. So in their minds, I had superpowers. So I didn't really have to fight as much because it's marketing, isn't it? They just went, oh, don't fuck with him, he knows Aikido. Not that anybody even knew what the fuck Aikido was. But there's a weird psychology amongst teens, and especially amongst teenage boys, and that was it. Like you just didn't mess with me then.
So that's good though, because then that would have given you a certain perception, and you could leverage that for your own benefit, and sort of, I suppose, it would have fed your esteem as well.
It did feed my esteem, and the most narcissistic elements of my personality have come from institutions. Because I'm a good phone responder, and I'm a good social comedian, and I know how to be charming and how to make a sales pitch. In the schools, as strict as they were, I was that prisoner who gets the special treatment. The guards didn't treat me like they treated the other prisoners. There was rules for everybody else, and there was a rule for me. And I knew that I was dodging raindrops. I knew I was dodging raindrops, and then I would play up to it. So I became kind of a little shit in that regard, because as much as things were bad at home, in an institution, I could play the game rather than have the game play me.
Mm-hmm. And has that helped you in your life since then? It must have done, because then you kind of figure out ways around how to charm people and how to work the system to your benefit.
Yeah, definitely. I think as far as the one area of my life that I can say that there's been consistent, reliable growth has been business, and it's all down to that. It's down to knowing how to speak to people, forming bonds with people, forming contracts with people, perception control, that kind of thing. It's an intrinsically business, and the particular brand of predatory capitalism that we live under now rewards the most narcissistic, psychopathic people. That's the nature of the game. It is. Yeah. And so you have to be able to model some of those patterns of behavior without being an exploitative arsehole, because you don't need to exploit people to make money. It's just not necessary. You can actually over deliver to people and make less money per sale, but still be making plenty of money because you kind of had good karma, good reputation, good word of mouth, and it's a much more sustainable, much less stressful way of doing business.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Richard, just give me 1 second. I'm going to close this door. Somebody's making some noise out there. Just give me 1 second.
Sure. How dare they? They obviously don't know who you're interviewing.
They don't know who I am. Yeah. Or who you are, more to the fact. Yeah. All right. So we've done sort of teen years. Let's bring you up to where you are now, which is a bit of a jump. I know. Let's just jump 20 years, shall we?
We'll jump 20 years. I wanted to join the army. I didn't join the army in the end because of I got gay bashed. That's why I didn't join the army.
I remember you said that in one of the other videos.
Yeah. Some guy beat me up in a gay bar, and I went down a bad path. Ended up becoming a bit of a scumbag, low-level criminal myself. Was working as a doorman. Got completely addicted to cocaine and alcohol and that whole lifestyle.
Oh God! Talk about that a little bit, Richard. How did you come out? How did you climb your way out of that?
Well, I was a time bomb waiting to go off because of all the childhood trauma, because I had the training as well, and because of the cocaine addiction. It was a bad combination of things. I was working on a very posh, the poshest club in Liverpool, But of course, the poshest club in Liverpool attracted the worst types of people. So we had a lot of like gangsters coming through, and it meant that you were not physically violent with people, but you were facing a lot of threat all the time. And it gave me a lot of sympathy for soldiers who commit crimes out of stress, especially young soldiers. And you see these terrible videos of American cops just fucking flipping their lid and punching the fuck out of somebody. What you don't see, and which is terrible, and they should never ever do that, and they wouldn't if they were trained properly. What you don't see is the 60 stops that they did before that one, where they think they're going to die, and they're trained to think this way, which is the wrong thing to train people. I know how they train them. So if you think you're going to die 60 times, the amount of adrenaline that builds up inside of you when somebody slightly resists arrest on the 61st time, you're going to give them 60 stops worth of adrenaline.
Right.
I'm not justifying what they do, but we as a society shouldn't put people through that amount of stress without proper training and proper outlets for it, which wouldn't be that hard to do.
So in the police officers, the 60, once you get to the 60th point, it's not with the same person, it's with a whole variety of people, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Well, the example I gave was America. So it's not always a complete variety of people in America, unfortunately. There does seem to be statistically rather a pronounced racial element there. Again, this is something that is part of the culture. It's not for nothing. But what we're seeing there is human frailty. What I don't like is people going, oh, fire them, hang them, pull their spines out their bums. And I'm like, there was a video of two young American Marines in Iraq. I'm going back a long time now, 2007. And one of them picked up a puppy and threw him into a ravine.
Oh, God. And
the internet obviously doesn't mind you killing humans, but the internet does not like you killing puppies and kittens. And people are going mad. And I was like, you've got to think about the trauma. That kid's probably 22 years old, probably dumb as fuck. He's probably from the Midwest, never seen anything, never owned a passport before joining the military. He's gone through the stress and the trauma of leaving his home and going through the military. And then he's in Iraq, where, again, the type of violence they were facing was insurgents hiding behind civilian population. It wasn't an outright war. So similarly, when I was on the door, I wouldn't get into a stressful conflict and then punch someone and have them punch me, which releases the stress. You just have this symbolic interaction, which is we're not evolved for. We can't deal with it. Long story short, I ended up hurting somebody very, very badly one night. Unfortunately, cocaine, CPTSD training. It did. Obviously, I was headed in one direction, and I could have died as a consequence of that because of the level of organized crime that we have in the area and the person that I had hurt. It got very, very serious. And so I prayed to God, as all wretched humans who are terrified do. What do they say? There's no atheists in a slit trench. There's no atheists in a slit trench. So I started praying to God and making deals and saying, if you protect my family from these people and you protect me from these people and I can pay them off, I'll do this, and this. And on the other side of that, I eventually managed to pay them off. Phone calls were made. I spoke to people that I needed to. I apologized, whatever, supplicated. And after that, I was a taxi driver, which I hated. I ran my own chauffeuring company, which wasn't that much fun. And then I started teaching kids in schools. A mate of mine at the time was like, oh, you should do this. And I got good at it for the reasons I just gave you, which is I understand institutions and I understand how to make a sales pitch. So instead of just teaching the kids, I'd sell them on the idea of learning. So I'd give them a 5-hour sales pitch. Did really well. Inside of 2 years, I was a keynote speaker at the National Education Conference. 3 years later, I was headhunted by the government for their enterprise that was called Aim Higher at the time. So I did well. Did really, really well. Started a self-defense company, got into an abusive relationship, tanked my own company, had a love spell put on me, and ended up in Kuala Lumpur. And that closes the circle very rapidly.
You know, when you were younger, and the relationships you had when you were in teenage years, were they also
Yeah.
narcissistic, or were they too young
No,
to know? Or were they too young to sort of say?
no, it was really strange. My first relationships up until I was like 25 years old, I had no attachment to them whatsoever. I had girlfriends who cheated on me and stuff, and I'm not just saying it, I literally didn't care. I couldn't understand what jealousy was. I didn't understand how people got heartbroken. I was not capable of those kinds of feelings, which makes me sound very cruel and psychopathic, but it was more like autism, because I didn't really enjoy sex either. I couldn't really do intimacy. I remember one girl I was with, for the first 3 months we were together, she was still seeing her ex-boyfriend, and I knew it. And I was like 22 years old, and I'd tell the people at work, and they'd be like, "Are you fucking crazy? You're letting your girlfriend see her ex-boyfriend?" And I was like, "Okay, doesn't affect me." So there's this weird psychopathic, Asperger's-y sort of behavior. So even if they had been total narcissists, they couldn't have got to me because I didn't feel anything. I wasn't even really there.
That's really weird.
It is. I'm looking back now and I'm like, damn.
Well, okay. So, do you think it was just conditioning from the family to sort of emulating your dad, maybe, who was just so like not there?
It's tempting to just say, okay, this is trauma, and it's ended up in a kind of autistic response, and it might have been. Subjectively, it's tempting to say that. That's the less interesting explanation. The more interesting explanation that I formulated was when I was 13, I started taking acid. I was desperate to leave this reality. I was doing magic. I was into tarot. I was trying to learn what sex magic was. I was into Crowley. And I started taking acid. I was like, I was doing Zen meditation as well. I was like, I'll force an enlightenment that will just bust me out of this prison. And I'd done so much of that sex, I was almost experiencing sex as a non-human entity. That's how I thought I was. I was like, I don't think I'm the same as these humans. I think I'm something else. I don't think and feel the way that they do. I'm not really invested in this game, was my thinking. I was like, look at how they are. Aren't they funny? They get all angry with each other. Like, one puts his willy in a girl, and then another one, and then they're angry and they punch each other. I'm like, why? There's other girls. What's the fucking big? Why? So I was experiencing.
Why were you like that? I mean, to me, that's so weird. And I don't know anybody that is sort of. I don't know anybody that has been that way and has come out of it to where you are. Like the people that I know that were that way, stay that way.
Right. So it's tempting to say that's psychopathic, and I just said it's Asperger's, and it's a bit weird. Consider the possibility, which I do from time to time. I have no conclusion that that's actually the natural way. That as tribal creatures that we are, we don't.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that I was actually thinking the same thing, and I've gone through my head many times. Is that actually the natural way of things? That maybe we've just conditioned ourselves into thinking that we need to be with these soul partners.
Dude, like it was so non-stressful. I was like, I remember a girl called Amy, and one guy was like, "Oh, I was with Amy, haha," and I'm like, "So, did you have a nice time? Was it nice?" Like, and a little bit of that, to be honest with you, has always stayed with me. I'm always like part of my sexuality. I'm not this girl, my house, my woman. I'm like, yeah, sure, do what you want. It's still there. It's just I have become civilized over time, but I had to learn how to see the person as being a possession. And I had to learn. I remember distinctly being 16 years old and being like, girls would get upset with me that I wasn't jealous over them. Girls would be upset with me that I couldn't enjoy sex with them the way other guys were. And I was like, I have to learn how to be abusive. So your initial response is my initial response from where I'm now, like, that sounds psychopathic. Actually, from his response, 15-year-old me, we're the psychopaths. We're the ones who have something wrong with us. So I keep that there. So I remember having to be like, okay, I now need to learn that when I have sex with a girl, there's a power play in this, and I'm kind of exploiting her. And I was like, I don't feel like that. And I'm like, dude, you're just going to have to learn. You're going to have to learn that there's an element, almost like of a rape element in the sex, because the girls I was with, if that wasn't there, they weren't into it. They weren't enjoying it. And I was like, oh, okay. And I had to condition myself. I'm saying way more than I've ever said on an interview online. Way fucking more. Blowjobs for the first 6 years of receiving them, couldn't enjoy them. I just got nothing. I was like, what are we doing? Why are we doing that? And I remember thinking, like, you have to learn to enjoy this. You have to see that this is demeaning for her and humiliating for her. Then you'll enjoy it. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess all right, I'll try.
So that's what you were thinking then. But what do you think now?
I generally don't have sex with people now. I just that's the honest truth. It's not. I have my theories, I have my philosophies, and I have my thoughts. But my tendency in psychology now is I move more away from Freud and away from Jung, and I'm more towards Adler. And I just say, well, what do you do?
Me too. I'm really into Adlerian psychology right now.
Yeah, he was way overlooked, way overlooked. And he was, I think Freud was smarter, but smarter doesn't mean more correct. Like Freud had more liquid IQ, raw IQ, but Adler, I think, was the right way. Yeah. So it doesn't matter what I say. These are all what Adler would call life fictions. I don't do it now because I don't know. I can't. It's not like I don't like women. I love women. I do. I was seeing somebody up until a couple of months ago. We were having sex. The sex was nice, but it's say for somebody like me, I'm trying to individuate from parental trauma. Okay, that's done. That's a job done. I feel like now I have to individuate from cultural trauma. And I can't, I think you said before, it's impossible to recover from abuse if you're still in a toxic environment. So I can't individuate what my real sexual urges are from culture because I'm still in it. So if you're still having, so I've had to learn. I'm not the first person to say this. Slavoj Žižek gets into this quite deeply. And he says that we're so culturalized, culture and ideology doesn't just teach us what to desire, it teaches us how to desire. So my personal suspicion is that my whole cycle of sexual attraction, seduction, what do you call the preamble before sex? What's that called? Foreplay. Right the way through to orgasm is not what I would naturally do. It's what I've been entrained to do. So I go, well, I'm just going to take a little break then and try and sort of figure this out, because if you keep doing it, you're actually just feeding the matrix. Like, I'm actually giving the matrix more power, and I don't want to do that. I want to pull out of it. So the answer to your question is, all right, right now I don't know.
Regarding the 15-year-old version of you and how you perceived what women were wanting then, how do you? What has your perspective shifted regarding what you learned at that time, what you said just now? Or is it pretty much the same? Women want to be humiliated, they get off on that. Or people, they want to be dominated, and the man has to be the one that's in the dominated position. Yeah,
I actually don't think it's intrinsic. There's no biological essentialism there. I think it's a cultural thing. Like, if you wanted to come to me and present the idea that yang penetrates yin, it's like an idea from hardline feminism. The penetrative sex between a man and a woman is always rape. And I'm like, first off, duh, obviously that's not true. Okay, is there any level in which there is an element of truth to that? I go, sure. So at some metaphorical level, it's an invasion. You are hard, she is soft. You penetrate, she yields. Okay, we can maybe work from there. Does that mean if my sexual drive then is fundamentally sadistic, is a woman's sexual drive fundamentally masochistic? Am I always dominant? Is she always submissive? And you could say in yin and yang, at the darker ends of the expression, yes. Can we enlighten those polarity expressions? Yes. Obviously, we can all rape and kill and torture, but we don't. Like, it's not, you're not sat there going, God, I wish I could murder somebody, but I just don't let myself. You just don't want to.
The thing is, the question then, based upon what you just said about the yin and yang polarities, is the question that is raised is, as we become more and more civilized, do our tastes become more civilized because it's conditioning? Or would it be healthier for us if we were to become more and more, not based in the terms of bad, but base primal urges? Is that the more natural way to be? And if it is that healthier? Or is the civilized sexuality more beneficial? I don't even know if I'm forming the question properly.
Yeah, you are. No, you are. I know what you mean. My brain's not working that well today. There was, going back quite a long time ago, there's a British anthropologist, a very stiff-looking chap in a jacket and with a pipe and all the gear from the late 1800s. And he was adamant, a zealot for going back to, because he'd spent time studying people who are still living in tribes. And he was like, we have to go back to this way of sexuality. Our modern sexuality is extremely neurotic. It's extremely repressed, and it makes us very sick. So that's usually German psychologists are this way. Don't suppress it, express it. You won't be addicted to it if you express it. You just do it until you don't want to do it anymore. So yes, I hear you. And I actually think in a utopian world that I'm the king of, I'd just be like, just do it. As long as it's not illegal, it's all consenting. Just do it all. Don't have some weird perverted thing that you've held back, that you're like 50 and you wanted to do this since you were 15 and you've never done it, which is so common. I speak to people all the time and they're like, I couldn't tell my wife my sexual fantasies. And I'm like, are you going to keep having sex with her for another 20 years and not telling her that this is what you fantasize, or you wanted to do this to you, or you want to do that to her, or you wanted to say that? Do the lot. So I'm still like when I am in a sexual relationship, I'm like, we're doing everything, because I'll be dead one day and so will you, and everything will be forgotten. So we may as well, because you should express it. Through expressing it, I believe you transcend it. You transcend the attachment to it. Repressing it just keeps it hanging around forevermore. Yeah,
I think that's true. Okay, I'm going to begin to round this off now. Okay, I'm going to ask you some questions, just really silly little questions just to finish this off. So what is your, if you were to give 3 favorite book recommendations, doesn't have to be on psychology or anything like that, what are your 3 favorite books that you would recommend to anyone?
I would recommend, well, the Pete Walker CPTSD one can change your life. Khalil Gibran, The Prophet, if you can access. Khalil Gibran, The Prophet, is the spirit you should access when reading any religious text. So I would recommend that. You want to enter that metaphorical, poetic. It's very light. It's nothing is dogmatic. It's the right way to approach religion. And the third book, see, there's answers that you give because you're trying to promote the idea of who you are. And I always think with this kind of question, you should actually give the answer of the book you've read the most of.
Yeah, don't give the answer that you're expected to give. Give the answer of the people.
The book I've read, I must have read upwards of 20 times, is A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. And I would recommend it. It's a fascinating and completely unique book, not least because it's written in a foreign dialect, which you will come to understand inside of a few pages, because that's how well it's written. Also written by a British guy living in Malaysia. A Clockwork Orange is obviously it's what it sounds like, but an orang is a man. That's where we get the word orangutan. Orangutans are the people of the forest, orangutan. So A Clockwork Orange, that's another one to look at.
I lived in Cambodia for 2 years, and they call the white man barang.
Barang. Oh, okay.
So it's probably connected to that. Yeah. Okay. Favorite TV shows or movies?
I am a frustrated writer, so I love good writing. And because I love good writing, the best TV show of all time for me is The Sopranos.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah,
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, best written show of all time. Studies the themes of narcissism, intergenerational trauma, and even touches on elements of Buddhist teachings as well. All behind New Jersey low-level criminal gangsterism. Really, I love that show, and it stands the test of time so well. You can still watch it now, and it's great. Did you say films as well?
Yeah, movies.
Give
me three favorite movies.
The best book to movie translation that's ever been done, I think, is The Silence of the Lambs by Jonathan Demme. Mm-hmm. It's a standalone, fantastic movie in and of itself. I edited a little bit of it recently for a YouTube video I was doing, and there is no fat on that film. The editing, everything is just, you couldn't change it and make it better. It's really, really good. Another good film that I've watched a lot of.
Wait, but what about The Color Purple? That was a fantastic book to movie translation. Or like
I have to be honest, I never read the book.
Because I thought the movie was even better than the book.
I watched that in so weird in the 80s in Portugal, and I couldn't understand. I did not get it at all. Didn't get it at all because we were raised like with Angolans around us. Like they would teach tennis. They were looking after us, and I was like, what is this country called America where they do this type of thing to people? What the fuck is all that about? I remember going to see Mississippi Burning in Villamora and coming back and saying to my mum, oh, I saw Mississippi. She was like, what do you think of it? And I went, it was good. It's not very believable though. And she went, it's a true story. I was like, it can't be a true story. Why would people dress up in fucking cloaks like they're in a magic society to kidnap young black men and torture them to death? Why would they do that? And she was going, well, that's the point of the film, you idiot. And I was like, my mind was fucking blown by that. And it took me years. It took me years to get my fucking head around that whole piece of history. I'm still fascinated by it, really fascinated by it, because it's so horrifying. I watched the Amistad movie the other day whilst I was training in the living room.
I still haven't seen that after all these years.
Oh, dude. There's one sequence where the main character remembers his journey from Africa to America. Fucking hell. It's awful. It's so bad. And then the third film I'd recommend is that I've watched a lot of was Get Shorty with John Travolta.
Yeah.
There's no depth.
John Travolta is a Horus Aquarius, is that astrological chart just before you.
Oh right.
Yeah.
He's fantastic in that film. Absolutely, that's one of my favorite. That's another gangster movie, but it's one of my favorites of all time.
Okay, what hobbies do you have, or hobby do you have that would surprise people?
The hobby that I have that surprises people is the dancing. I'm really into bachata, but only Dominican bachata.
Really, I would never have guessed. Oh, that is surprising.
Yeah, that's like my favorite thing. I love the music. I love the dance. I love everything about it.
By the way, how many languages do you speak?
Well, I was raised in Portugal, so I learned to speak Portuguese. My mum spoke French. We were surrounded by people who spoke all different types of languages, but I wouldn't say, Spanish. I guess my last girlfriend was a Spanish speaker, so I can live with somebody who speaks Spanish, but I can't explain psychology in Spanish. I can't speak to that level. Cantonese, I've learned to speak some Cantonese, Portuguese, and that's it really. But I'll try anything, and I'll give it a go. And people think, because I'm a good mimic, they'll be like, oh wow, I've done some intros in Russian, and people go, oh, so you're fluent in Russian? I'm like, no, not at all. I'm just blagging it. Spanish is the only thing I could have a conversation with you in now.
Okay. In your own words, what makes you, you?
Me socks. I don't know. I've no idea.
It's a hard question, actually.
Yeah, I don't really know.
Okay.
I don't know what I am.
Let me ask you a different question. How would a friend describe you? Or like a really close friend?
A
How would
really
they
close
describe
friend would describe me as mad, funny. I've got a close mate, and he describes me as dead fucking clever.
I think I'd agree. Not that I know you, but I think you do come across as dead fucking clever.
Dead fucking clever, like.
So, you know what? The biggest surprise for me is that you were raised in Portugal. All this time I thought you were raised in Liverpool.
No, I'm not. Well, I'm from the Wirral, which is over across the water from Liverpool. So we're not Scousers here. It's a funny little place, because on one side, the side that faces the port of Liverpool, we would build the ships. I think we might have built the Amistad. You know, we used to build all the slave ships around here, and then they get floated from Liverpool out to Africa and then onto America. So there's that side of the peninsula, it's like a finger, and then on the other side, the side I'm facing here, it faces Wales. So we're half city and half country. At one time, there was more horses per square mile here in the Wirral, where I'm from, than anywhere else in the UK. So it's a strange combination of city and country.
And you're yet another horse to add to that.
And one more horse living here. Yeah, one more horse on the Wirral.
Yeah. All right. Cool. All right. They always finish in the actor studio with the question, "What's your favorite swear word?" So I'm going to ask you that.
I would have said "foch" in a Scouse accent, but probably "cunt." Like, I hold that one back. That's like somebody's being a real cunt. It's a very satisfying, but you can't use it too much or it loses its magical power. You have to reserve it in a jar.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Okay, Richard, this has been so much fun. It really has.
I'm so glad you didn't do the other actors studio questions, like, what is your favorite sound?
Baby crying.
I'd be like, okay, I don't know.
No, not your favorite sound. What is your worst favorite sound? Your least favorite sound? My baby crying. What's your favorite sound? Or my dog laughing. It's so pretentious.
Did you ever see the actor's studio where it had a young Bradley Cooper asking a question about being an actor?
No.
Yeah, there's one of him. It's so strange. He just looks like this young dork, lanky American kid. I can't remember who's on. Probably if you put it into YouTube, Brad. But you see him 5 years before he made it, like as some young kid just being like, "What does it take to be an actor in Hollywood?" But then eventually, of course, he did. Yeah, I love the actor's studio. I like watching that.
Me too. The best one I saw of all was Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle's actor studio was just phenomenal. There was no holding back. He said everything. He just told you it's straight. Have you not seen that one?
I've not seen that one yet. No, but I would watch it, because the last two specials he's released, I've been so impressed. He's really just a man refining his art.
I've been watching. I mean, I've been a big fan of his for years. So he's a Chinese year of the ox, and he's Virgo. So I have a very strange story about this. I'm probably. Let me finish the interview first, and I'll tell you my story about Dave Chappelle. Because it's not something I probably should be talking about on the screen, and you'll hear about that. Anyway. Thank you very much for joining me, Richard Grannon. And you've kind of enlightened me about you and your life, and I hope that other people have enjoyed it as much as I have.
Very cool. It was a great experience. Thank you for having me on.
Where can we find you?
I have a website called SpartanLifeCoach.com. Alternatively, if you put my name, Richard Grannon, into YouTube, you'll see my various channels there.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
And I will see you next time on the Zakariya Adeel podcast. Bye.